All right, guys. So I got a real hot rod in the barn today to work on. We got some work to do to it. It's right here. Yep, it's a pink four-wheeler.
All right, so what's the deal with this thing? This is a Tao motor four-wheeler quad. I don't know the correct term for this thing. I'm not really a ATV kind of guy necessarily. Um, it has a 125cc air-cooled single-cylinder engine. It belongs to my nieces. They got it. They used it for a couple years or whatever, and then it just started running really bad. I'm not sure if it was bad gas or what the problem was with it. My brother-in-law decided he'd put a carburetor on it, thinking that was what was wrong with it. He got a carburetor online and threw it on there. Parts are real cheap for these, and I don't know if that's if that explains what the problem is, if it's just a really crappy carburetor or not. But it doesn't run at all now, and it's sat now for at least a year, I would say. It got dropped off here as kind of a last resort so that I could go through and clean it up and see if we can get it going again. It's been here a bit. I just kind of forgot about it out behind the barn. It was under a tarp and everything. And I figured it's a rainy, cooler Saturday. So I figured I'd try to dive into this, get it fixed, get it back to them so that they can, enjoy it a little bit, rip it around and tear up the lawn and stuff. So let's get into this and see what we got going on. All right, so let's take a look in here, if we can get this cap off. Some kind of hose stuck in there. Well, it has gas in it, which kind of sucks because I'm sure it's horrible. It's pretty yellow looking. I don't know if you can actually see in there or not. And it seems like a fair amount in there. We'll give it the sniff test. Oh yeah, that's bad. So it's got bad gas in it now. I don't know if that was the problem. It looks pretty clean inside. So I'm gonna drain the tank. That's definitely gonna have to happen. We've got, let's see if we can see in here. We've got this carburetor on here. I kind of think that my brother-in-law bought a bigger carburetor than what came on this. And unfortunately, the original one we don't know where it is. It's missing. So I bought the correct size that's called for this. I don't think this would have been stock on it, this air cleaner. And I think this looks like a larger inlet. I don't know. I'm hoping this pipe is the original one. But I don't know a lot about these things. I'm going to do an oil change on it. I'm going to change out that carburetor. We'll dump the gas, put fresh gas in it. If I can get it running good, then I'll grease up some stuff. Looking back here, when I was rolling it in, I could hear things scraping. So I'm sure that the brakes are kind of a little crappy on it. I'll grease the chain. I don't know. Feels okay, but we'll put some grease on that. I'll spray down that rotor and see if I got to give it a quick Scotch-Brite or something along those lines. All right, so here's what I got for this thing. I went right on Tao Motors or Tao Tao, whatever the name of this thing is, and I bought parts directly from them just to make sure we get the right things. And I got this new carburetor. I figure it wasn't worth messing around with whatever's on there. We know it doesn't run. And I suspect it's probably just, I think that other one came off eBay or someplace, and it was like a, $10 carburetor. This is like a $25 carburetor. So it's still pretty cheap, but it's supposedly the right size and everything for this. This air filter cleaner, it's got like a foam filter in there. It's all bent up. And I bought two spark plugs. It's a weird little tiny spark plug. And I bought two of them just in case I severely foul one out or something like that. I figured it was just easier to have two. And then I got a new fuel filter, which I'm pretty sure it's just a screen inside there. So I don't know how much that's actually doing anyway. And then I bought, I don't know if you can see this. Can we get that in there? So I bought this battery. I don't know what these, they're just little tiny batteries. So I don't know if this is a good one or not. All of this stuff was really cheap for this thing. So I can kind of understand why people would buy these like this brand of four-wheeler or whatever. And I got some oil for it too. I can understand why people buy them because they're so cheap. I just don't know. I don't know the quality of this thing. I don't know how long they last. This is the first one I've ever worked on, so I'm really not familiar with them. But let's get started draining the gas out of it. We'll pull the carb and see if we can get it going. All right. So looks like you got the kind of weird. Got fuel filter coming down from the tank right up in here. Let me grab from the other side. Fuel tank exits right here, comes down into a line. We got a petcock here, and then it goes into the carburetor. I don't know. This must be a breather, I guess. There is a second, what looks like a fuel filter. Looks like the same one. Coming out of this side, going down to the, if I can see around the corner here, going down to the crankcase. So yeah, I'd say that's a breather there of sorts. Odd. Maybe vacuum, something, I don't know. Like I said, this isn't exactly my wheelhouse, so gonna have some figuring out here. This one I can pull right off, so that's not even really on there. And then this one, they just use these little clamps. And I am familiar with these for like chainsaws and stuff like that. And I guess this is basically the same idea, just a bigger piece of small equipment engine. I mean, realistically, 125 cc's is actually pretty small. I mean, that's smaller than a pressure washer or snowblower, at least anyway. So they get little clamps on the hoses. You just squeeze them, they loosen up. Kind of convenient because you don't have to go get any tools necessarily. So let's see if anything's gonna, yeah, there's stuff coming out of there. Is this thing open or closed? It is off, but I'm sure it's just whatever's left in there. Yeah, it's just a couple drips. That's all right. I'm actually, to drain this tank, I'm actually going to pull this bolt out up here so that this petcock can hang and get a little more length out of this. And then I can drop this hose into a bucket and just open it up and let this thing drip for a while until it's empty, I think is probably my best bet. All right, so this thing's got, is this like a 5mm? Yeah, 5mm Allen screw that kind of feels like it's just going to strip out. Oh, there it goes. And you could probably just disconnect the line right at the tank. I just don't want to dump this all over the floor, or I don't have a big pan that I'm going to put underneath it. I'm just going to feed this right into a plastic bucket, a small one. So pulling it this way to me just makes a little more sense. And then I got to shut off on it so I can, if by chance, I don't know how many, like, I assume this is no more than a gallon. But my bucket's less than a gallon. So if this thing actually has a gallon in it, I'd like to be able to shut it off and, you know, go find a bigger bucket or dump this one into a can and go from there. They get the longest screw in America on this thing. All right, so there's a nut on the back of this. I kind of thought it was just going to be threaded into the, like, have a threaded hole in the frame, but that is not the case. There's a nut, so that's why it doesn't want to come off. There we go. Kind kind of close quarters on everything in this. I wish you could just take the body off this, but I feel like it might be more work than actually doing the whole thing. I don't know. Maybe you guys know if these are simple. I don't know if I'll ever have to do it again, but all right. All right, let me get my bucket set up. All right, so we got a little bucket here, and I get this set up. We'll see if this petcock actually works, and like, or if it's clogged. I don't know. It's going. It's gonna smell good. All right. All right, we're gonna let that run for a while, and maybe we'll start pulling the carburetor off while that's draining out. All right, so I'm gonna get this air filter off first. The screw is on this side, just where the clamp landed, I guess. So I'm on this side unscrewing this thing. Let's see if it pulls right off. Thing's a little mangled too. All right, there is a fuel drain hose, looks like comes from the float maybe, that's clipped down here at the bottom. So I'm gonna get that free. We get the crankcase vent hose here going that way. And then it looks like it's just basically two screws here that are holding this in, or two bolts. Let's get the choke out of the way. Two bolts going through the carburetor. Again, super long, so kind of weird, but it is what it is. And then you've got the throttle cable going into it, because this is a side draft carburetor, like a motorcycle, or I don't know, lots of smaller engines, or like British cars, things like that, use a side draft carburetor. So there should be a needle type float in here, like it's basically a cylinder that drops in. Let's see if I can just unscrew it and if it'll come out. Yeah, here you go. There's a spring. This is typical, like an SU carburetor on a British car. So we'll get that out of the way. It's all this stuff. I'll show you a little closer when we open up the new carburetor, because we're going to have to disconnect that and change this needle over from what's on this cable now to the new one. So let's grab, is this a 10 millimeter maybe? See if I can get in here, if I'm going to need a socket. Real close quarters on stuff in this. It's a little it's physically a very small four-wheeler. So things are kind of tight. And the opening they have here, I mean, you can see my hand. I'm not like a massive person, and you know, it's a pretty small hole there to try to work through. So we've got one bolt. I don't know if these are stock bolts. I feel like that's an awfully long bolt for what's needed on this, you know? I don't know if maybe they came with, you know, a kit that they got when they, knocking my fuel line all over. Maybe it came in the kit with the carburetor or something. You can literally buy these carburetors. Like when I was shopping for the other one, I mean, I saw a whole carburetor for like $8, and it's like, what? I don't come from that world where carburetors are $8, and it's kind of that to me. That's like, I don't even understand how they manufacture it for that price, and I'm in parts, so but that's all right. So we got a gasket, kind of like a hard, like a ring for an O-ring, which I don't see the O-ring, but there's one there. So this, I wish I saw which way that came off. There is no gasket on this between, yeah, it's definitely, I bet this is 90% of the problem. So this carburetor has a O-ring inside here. Then it has this flange, which is literally just a piece of plastic with a groove cut in it, and it's smooth on the other side. There is no gasket between this and the manifold, so your hard plastic on an aluminum intake manifold, I don't see how that was sealing at all. Hopefully there's some kind of paper gasket or something in there for the new one I got, because this none of this seems like that was a very good design or plan right there. This manifold, I can see that this port is significantly smaller. I don't know if you can see that, but it does seem significantly smaller than this carburetor I'm pulling off. Let's get this over to the bench and just look at them side by side, the new one and that one. So I got everything on the bench here. They do actually appear to be the same, at least style carburetor. It just uses an O-ring. They do look like about the same size port, so it's weird that the intake, maybe it's not actually smaller and it just looks it because it's in there. I can tell you there are two different carburetors. This one has like a logo on it. It says Standard of Japan, not to be confused with Made in Japan. Otherwise, it looks pretty much like the same carburetor. So I guess for your extra, I don't know, I paid like $15 more for this, for this new one opposed to one of these super cheap ones. So hopefully you're actually getting something better. I mean, it at least has casting numbers and things like that. So there was a little more effort put into this than there was put into this in manufacturing, or at least in the mold that they cast it off of. I don't understand this gasket or this spacer. I don't know if it's required or not. When I purchased this carburetor, I was looking at a diagram of this engine, and I tried to get every piece that I possibly could, knowing that I don't know about these necessarily. So I bought this, and if I had seen that there was a spacer on it needed, I would have bought the spacer as well. So I'm not really sure. I'm going to try, because this O-ring sticks out further, that should mate right up on the surface of the intake manifold. I'm thinking a lot of the problem here was this, because either way you do this, if you put this spacer in, this is loose on the O-ring, so there's no way that's sealing air. If you put it this direction so that it seals on the flat side with this O-ring, then there's a giant groove here with no O-ring in it. I don't know if there was supposed to be one, and maybe if an O-ring came in the kit and it was put on here, that we wouldn't have had any kind of issue with this. I really don't know, because I did not install this one. The gas that's in it is awful. This is, I mean, it's I don't know if you can see it, but it's actually like yellow staining too. So it's definitely bad. It's pissing out everywhere too. And then you get this air cleaner. Nothing really wrong with this. This is probably fine. If it fits better than this, I'll put it back on. But this is supposedly what the factory one looked like. It's a terrible fit too. You look at the diameter, the inside diameter of this hole, and then this carburetor. It's not going to fit this way because that's hard plastic. So it has to go on this rubber way. And all you're doing is clamping that thing on there. It seems, you would just think that would be a smaller hole, but it's the same situation with this one. The clamp was the only thing holding that on there. That's not actually sealing anything. That's not stopping dirt from sucking in here. So if this is the factory original one I purchased this from Tao Motors or whatever website they have linked on their website to telling you this is where you buy stuff. And this is what they give you with this great shaped rubber boot. And then it just kind of, I mean, there's no way that's correct. So if this was what was factory on these, there's absolutely no way this was sealed correctly and it wasn't sucking air past the filter. And these girls were riding this thing around in the yard, literally tearing up the grass. So, dirt everywhere and everything. So I would almost be willing to bet that the original carburetor was filled with dirt, just from sucking it in. And then this thing is just either garbage or it's this missing O-ring. I'm a little more confident that we should be able to fix this thing unless it's got internal engine damage. So to get in here, you're unscrewing. This is what I did to disconnect it. You're going to unscrew this. There is a cap with a gasket, which I'll pull the other one. Let me go grab the other one because the gasket on this looks much better than what just came off the other side. You've got your big spring. And then down in there is the plunger. Let me see if I get something I can push that up gently with. So all this is a needle that as you draw this up with a typical side draft carburetor, I don't know if you can see into there. Yeah, I guess you can. So there's a needle there. That needle has a seat way down inside there, passed beyond into this part of the carburetor. All you're doing when you pull the throttle, you're lifting this up and you're literally allowing the needle to come away from the seat. And the further you pull away from the seat, the more fuel it's allowing into the, to be sucked in. And that is how you, let me make sure I didn't move my hand. So let's make sure this goes back in the correct way. That is how you accelerate. You pull the needle out of the seat. It allows for more fuel. RPMs go up and you accelerate. So that's the whole idea of this. I'm almost tempted. If I have to, I'll do it after. I'm almost tempted to take this new carburetor apart and clean it just to make sure that there's not a lot of crap all stuck in it. Because you never know with this type of thing if, you know, it's a $25 carburetor. So there can't be a whole lot to this thing, but there also can't be a whole ton of quality control built into it either. So, all right. Let me get the other parts out of there and see how that section goes together and see if we can put the needle back on. We'll see if this mounts up to the intake and we'll go from there. All right, so one more thing. I just pulled this portion off of here. I dropped the gasket somewhere between here and there. I don't know, it doesn't matter, I don't need it. The gasket that was in here was just like a black rubber, kind of crappy looking gasket. And you can see on this one, this is a typical carburetor style gasket where it's not rubber. It's got kind of, it's like, I don't want to call it paper because I'm sure that's the wrong term for it. But so this had a crappy gasket in there. Otherwise it seems relatively the same. The angle is different, which is weird, but I guess that is what it is. One thing I did notice here is the new needle has a brass needle to it. This one has a steel one, maybe stainless. I don't know. It's probably not. It's probably just steel. And it actually feels, the old one actually feels heavier. I don't know if it's still plastic, but I would say that's a better needle. It tells me that the seat in this is probably also just crappy steel inside there. There's also some mouse stuff falling out of this carburetor, so that's not great either. I noticed on it that there is a notch in this needle. You can see one side is completely flat, one side has a notch. That notch was facing in away from, on this carburetor anyway, it was facing in away from, I can't get that in there. Away from the intake manifold. So that's facing towards the air cleaner, let's say, is the right way to say that. The way this hooks up, and I should have shown you taking the other one off, the cable goes through all of these parts, goes through this cup, through the spring, and then what happens with it is it slides down this notch, and there is a hole in the bottom here, if you can see that. And it has a barrel on the end of the cable, and it hooks into that hole in there and then pulls back up through, and all of this is sprung. I would imagine, I don't know if it's possible to put this in backwards. It does have some locating tabs in there, so maybe it isn't. But I would imagine that if this is in the wrong way, this notch that's here is there for a reason. The choke on this, when you put this choke up, you can see there's a door that comes down and kind of covers that up. And that's pretty much your choke. Inside this carburetor actually looks really clean. It's cleaner than I would expect it to look. It doesn't mean that there isn't some crap in there somewhere. I'm not going to pull it apart. We'll let it be and we'll go from there. Let me get these pieces hooked up to the cable. We'll get the carburetor mounted and I'll bring you back for all that. All right, so if I reach back in here And my fuel line's going to just constantly be in the way. Here's the cable, and here's this little barrel nut that I was talking about. So I've got to get all of this threaded up through here. The other one was tough getting off. The rubber fits over this little end of the cable. I guess that was pretty easy. Maybe the other one was a little smaller or something. It was pretty tight on there. And then from there, we want to put our spring on. And this is where it's going to get a little hard because they don't give you a whole lot of cable here unless this throttle is stuck. No, it's not. So they don't give you a lot of cable there. So I've got to get this spring compressed. Hopefully I don't have my hands in the way the whole time for it. Get the spring compressed, pull the barrel out, and then you're going to run this, which notch is it? This one? Run it into the front of the notch, and you can see the barrel will sit inside there, and then pull it all the way up, and there we go. So that's in there. A little floppy, but that's all right. It'll be fine once it goes into the carburetor. So there's that. Now, do I want to put this in first? Or do I want to mount the carburetor first? I feel like this is going to be a tricky thing to do with the carburetor mounted, and some of you are probably going, oh no, don't do that. That's the wrong way, but that's the direction I'm going to take because I think I can get the needle in the seat easier. There we go. Get my needle down in there. This cap has a direction to it. It has like a tab on either side, so it only goes in one way with slight rotation, but pretty much just one way. And again, I'm sorry, my hand is probably in the shot, but this is so small that it's hard to do this and not get in the way. This is pretty fine threads on this. So if you do one of these, I'd be make sure you're real easy with getting this threaded on there because I could see being able to strip this out pretty easily. I'm going to leave it just one turn loose so that I can rotate this. So now we got the O-ring in there. I'm hoping that this O-ring is going to be able to seal on here. And I'm questioning if this is the original manifold. I don't think this is. Because it's like I need that spacer in there to make that work. Yeah, there's no way that's going to bolt up. All right, let me grab the spacer, see if I've got an O-ring that'll fit in the other side of it, because there's no point in putting it back on there. If it doesn't have an O-ring or some kind of a gasket on this side, I may have to cut gasket material. It's going to have something though. There's no way to seal it. I'm guessing this intake is not the original intake. I'm guessing this came with the other carburetor, and we don't have any of the original parts. They all were tossed out, and it's probably why the screws are real long, everything, like the whole thing. But if I try to put this on, it's hitting the carburetor, the bottom of the float bowl, or what we would call a float bowl on this thing, is actually touching the manifold down here. So it's going to need that spacer. I think even with the spacer, it's a pretty tight fit. So let me see what I got for a gasket, and we'll get going on that. All right. Well, lucky for us, the O-ring that was on the other carburetor is exactly the right size. So this kit should have came with 2 O-rings, the kit of whatever this intake and everything was that was on it. If I had known this intake was the wrong one, I would have just bought another one because I'm sure it would have been, $20-30 or something based on the price of the other stuff I bought, and not had to use this spacer. Maybe this is a factory thing. If it is, it's I don't understand it. I don't know why you would build something that way, but it is what it is. So this O-ring fits in there well. We will get this on O-ring facing the manifold so that you have a seal for the surface. And then the carburetor has its own O-ring that'll seal on this flat surface. If I feel it has a leak afterwards, I have no problem coming back and RTVing this all together because I don't really see that there's a good way to seal this. And the carburetor is still, because of this drain tube, it's hitting a fin on the engine. It's still not really sitting flat. So I have my doubts that any of this really fits together well. And it would kind of explain why it wouldn't start if you've got that bad of a intake leak. The spacer needs to basically be a little thicker. I lost a bolt. All right. This is a good job for a scissor lift right here, and I do have one, and it's not in the barn. It is in another garage, and it needs to be moved over here, and it's a whole nother project, I guess. Yeah, so this bottom tube is a problem on this cylinder. I mean, it must get hot too, because you've got a rubber hose right on a fin, and then it runs right over the top of the. It must be. Yeah, that's the cylinder there. Well, we'll see if there's a way to improve that too, but not right now. Let's get this thing, see if it runs, and go from there. Because I want to change the oil on this, assuming it runs well and there's nothing wrong with the engine. We'll drain the oil out of it and do an oil change on it too, because I'm sure it has never had an oil change. Okay, that side's good and tight. Something to think about when you're doing something like this. This is an aluminum carburetor body with a steel bolt going through it, and it's a of questionable quality, let's say. I would not want to over tighten that. You can always tighten it up a little more because it has O-rings, because it has a rubber O-ring in it. You can always tighten it up a little bit more later rather than crank it down right now. So now by leaving this nut loose, this kind of feels like it found its location of which angle it wants to go at. So the cable shouldn't be binding. So I'm going to hand tighten that, hit the throttle, and it sounds pretty good. I can't see in there. I can feel the needle rising up when I put my finger in there. Nothing's binding, so I'd say that's in there pretty good. And I'm just seeing you had a shifter in front of you for most of that. I apologize. I probably rolled the whole four-wheeler while we were doing that. All right, let me get the air cleaner on. All right, so we got our new air cleaner. If I can fish this thing through here, big plastic thing, get that on there. I'm going to set it so that the screw to remove the air cleaner is on this side, since everything, at least to me, is physically on this side of this engine. Okay, get that filter tight. It's odd because this still kind of moves around. So I feel like these just weren't, like they weren't concerned with you getting dust in this engine, which I don't totally agree with, but it is what it is. So the next thing we've got is our breather hose. And what I just noticed is this has a plug in it. It has like a brass pin sticking out of it. I can't see. Maybe it's got like a small breather hole in it somewhere. But I can tell you that the one that came off this, the other one, this was just straight into a hole that I'm assuming dropped down into this casting and into the float or whatever. I don't know that. I don't really understand that, why that's there. I'm going to assume, and I'm just kind of blind here, I'm going to assume that there is a very small hole in the side or end of this somewhere. We'll see what happens, I guess. This fits on here, it looks like. Yeah, that'll fit on there, no problem. If I can get the clamp to sit in there. It's very small stuff. You need smaller hands than I have to get in here, so. Working on these things with a giant meat pod ain't gonna be easy. All right, so that's on there. And then our fuel line goes into this side. This thing seems like it's done dripping. Let's pull this bucket out. So here's our fuel that came out of this, and there's the gasket that I was saying I lost along the way. It must have just fallen in there. That's pretty murky. I wouldn't say that there's any dirt in it necessarily. Most of the dirt that's in the bottom there probably just came off that gasket. So I think other than having some remnants of old fuel left in this thing, I'm not overly worried about flushing out the tank too much. I don't think it holds a whole lot anyway. And the tank looks pretty clean. So let's get this set up to put some gas in this. I got to put a battery in it. And then we will get back into this thing and see if we can get it running. I'll put I'll do the spark plug now too, just in case the plug has something wrong with it and that's why it won't fire. Like I said, I didn't check, I haven't checked anything on this. I just know the fuel's bad. I know they tried to start it. It wouldn't start. It could have an ignition problem. It could have all kinds of problems. I just wanted to go back to a stock carburetor, or a relatively stock carburetor, what the factory says is a stock carburetor, and at least get back to a 0 point and start from there rather than start from who knows what else has been done and what's good and what's bad. So all right, so let's do our fuel filter here. You can see it better than I can, so see if I can get this thing off here. It's just a little guy, and it doesn't look dirty, but I have a new one. It was like 60 cents, so we might as well put a new one on it. I'll save this old one in case, I would reuse that and not think anything of it. So we'll save that, but I will throw the new one on just because. And the way this fuel filter should mount, I didn't actually just pay attention to how the old one was, but you should be going, fuel should travel from this side into this bottle, basically, let's call it, and out this side. This has got a direction to it because there's the screen that's in there is going to allow stuff to get caught. If you go the other way, the screen's just going to fill up rather than go past it. Okay, so there's our new fuel filter on there. And get some gas dripping underneath. I guess at this point, let me get this petcock back up on here. It just goes through this tab in the frame. Again, you can probably see it better than I can. And hopefully I can do this without getting my hand in there too much so you can still see. But it's pretty simple. It's just a bolt going through with a nut on the back side. Is it a lock nut? That explains it. It is a lock nut. That's why I had trouble getting it off. I couldn't see that there was a nut on it. I thought it was just, I would have welded a nut to the back side of this if I built this frame. So that wouldn't have had to deal with putting a nut on the back of this when you can't even see where your hand is. Get that somewhat straight. Okay. All right, so there's our petcock in place. You can actually see it through here. We've got, you can't see it, I don't think, because the hose in the way, but the port that it goes in is right there. So I'm just going to throw that on while I'm sitting on the floor here. Get this clamp down in place to hold that so it don't come shooting off and get fuel everywhere. So this seat has to come off somehow to get to this battery. I saw it was loose in the front. I think it's missing something down in here, but there's got to be something. Yep, yeah, there's a lever in the back that you pull. This lever. I feel like this is supposed to have a hinge or something along the lines of that to clamp into here somewhere. I'm not seeing it reaching anywhere. Probably should have pulled that off first. Would have got more light down in there. I figured I'd get the battery in before pulling the spark plug. We can, it's missing a battery hold down too. We can get the battery in and then we can turn it over and check for spark before we even put gas in it. If there's no spark, then we know there's another issue and we can kind of go from there. So here's our new battery. I think they gave you new screws with it or something here. Yeah, new nuts and bolts here. So I'm gonna need a Phillips to get this thing going. Let's get this just dropped down into the hole here. Let's go this way. Don't sit down in there too far, huh? Okay. Odd. So you gotta get a nut down in there and then oh, I see. So the nuts that they give you for this aren't just a plain nut. It's actually I don't know if you can see that, but it's like a rectangular nut. So it must slide into this battery some direction, and yeah, it does. So it'll slide in there and hold. Make sure you get your battery cables the right direction. So obviously there's the red side. So let's see if we can get this in without losing everything and get that started. My screwdriver took off on me. Out in the back. All right. That's actually not too bad. I just slid the little block in there. It's actually not, that's pretty good. I slid the block in through this square, basically. Get it roughly in place, and then the screw was long enough to reach it pretty good. Hopefully that happens again on this one. I might have got lucky. Nope, it's grabbing it. So that's pretty good, I think. Maybe it's not grabbing it. Okay, there we go. Now we got that on there. Pretty small battery, small wire, small terminals. Must just not take a whole lot. All right, let's pull this spark plug and we can check if we've got spark. I believe this is in neutral. Seems to roll pretty good. I've got the brake on. And I've got nothing. It's also possible I don't know what I'm doing with this either. Got it. Okay, awesome. So we got a good battery. You never know, because the battery was like $20 too. So who the hell knows if it's a good one or not. But we did get this so that it'll turn over. So that's a good sign. Let's pull that plug. We'll check if we've got spark and we'll go from there. Here's our spark plug wire. There's the spark plug. I am just going to pull this out. Hopefully it, hey, good. You never know with this stuff if it's going to come right out or if this thing's going to get stuck. All right, here's a spark plug. It looks relatively good. I'm still going to replace it because there's no point in not putting a new one in. I have brand new ones. I'll make sure it's the exact same number and everything. But let's test this for spark. I'm going to... So there's a few ways you can check a spark plug for spark. You can just take this, hold this up to here, and let me see if I can hit it. And we got good spark. I think you can probably see that sparking. It does have spark, so that's good. They also sell this type of a tool, and it has a light built into it. I like using these on cars. This is so small you can just reach it, but if you have the right adapter here, you can just take and ground that, and these basically have a bulb inside there that, if you do it right, you can see that firing off and rather than using the spark plug. Either way is fine. I have one of these. I use it a lot for cars because, you don't always have that kind of a reach. And sometimes it's hard to hit the starter and have a plug just kind of dangling and hope that it hits and you can see it. With the light, you can actually get, you can be a little further away from it and you can catch the light blinking. So let me get the new plug set up. Okay. I've got my spark plug. I checked the number on it. It is the exact same number, so that's good. I don't have a gap for this, but what I did is I just kind of looked at this one, and this seems reasonable for a gap, considering the size of the spark plug. So we're just going to run with that and see what happens. The old one, the gap was very, very tight. I don't know if it is intentionally tight or if somebody did something to it, but... something to pay attention to when you're replacing a spark plug in a lawnmower, overseas four-wheeler, a car, whatever. If you've got an aluminum cylinder head, which this is, and you've got a steel spark plug, it's dissimilar metals. Always put anti-seize on these. You'll be happy that you did it when the thing next time you go to change it and it actually comes out and doesn't get, seized in there and rip the threads out with it. And I always put spark plugs in as much as I can by hand. And then I come back with the wrench and just give it, a quarter turn. There is a torque spec on it, and you get kind of a feel for what's tight and what's not. And that's as tight as I'm going to make that. Doesn't need to go any tighter. Put the wire back on and that should be good to go. All right, we got some gas out of the shed. It shouldn't be too old, so I think it'll be all right. You may have seen while I was filming, this thing was disconnected. This is a fuel cap breather so that the gas tank can breathe. I just grabbed, it's actually the drain hose off the other carburetor, and I just clipped it down so that fits on there. Gave it a little bit more length than what it had because I'm guessing that it gets ripped off when people are taking it on and off. So, and I cannot make a mess. And I make a mess. So I'm throwing a little stabilizer in it. So at least this tank of gas will be good. I don't know that they will, I will tell them to, but I don't know if they will put stabilizer in it. If they do, it should at least, keep it for a little bit. Whew. This smells fine. I've been using this in like the lawnmower and stuff, and it's running okay, so. I think this gas is probably from late winter, so it's not really that old, so it should be okay. I don't want to fill this up too much. I can't see where it's full. All That should be enough to run it anyway. It's probably, actually it's pretty full now, so. It's a pretty small gas tank. I think it's probably like a gallon, somewhere around that range. Just cap back on, my stabilizer out of the way. All right, we're in neutral. I'm gonna pop this door open because I've got other work to do today and I don't feel like stinking up the place if it does start. It is not raining at the moment, but it's pretty wet and humid out, so. All right, ignition on. This is on. Whoa. This is, we gotta tighten this up. Something's not right here. Oh, I don't have the choke on. So let's pull the choke up. If I can see it. Throw the choke on for a little bit. So it's got to, I'm going to have to adjust the idle or something on this because it's clearly it's running, it's smoking quite a bit, but it's running. But it doesn't seem to want to idle. And I don't know if it's a situation where when it warms up, it'll be okay or it won't. But I'm going to check it out and I'll bring you back in a second. So looking at this carb, we've got a air fuel mixture here and we've got an idle speed adjustment here. Typically, your air fuel is going to be closest to the filter. If this was a regular downdraft carburetor, a lot of your idles would be on that. But because it doesn't work that way, idle is going to be here because of where the needle is. And this is going to be here because of the port that goes at the front of the carburetor. So we got to get this warmed up somehow. I may have to make an adjustment to the idle just to get it to stay running long enough so I can get it warmed up, because really you shouldn't be adjusting a carburetor when it's not warmed up, when the engine's not warmed up. So let's see if we can get this to go again. Let me pull my choke out if I can find it. Whoop. So we're actually leaking gas. I can see it leaking out. I don't know if I just flooded it or what's going on, but you literally have gas leaking out of the bottom of this thing. All right, let me figure out where that's coming from and I'll bring you back. All right, so here's where I'm at with this thing. I was having a real bad flooding problem where this thing would just, it was just, as soon as it would stall out, it would just blow gas right out the end of the carburetor and fill up the air cleaner and piss out all around it, all running down everywhere. I actually pulled the carburetor off. I took the float bowl off to check the float to make sure it was actually shutting off, because common sense says if you've got something that's, backing up with fuel, then probably the float isn't turning off. Everything checked out fine. Put it back together. Did it again. Back and forth a few times. What I ended up doing is I pulled this, what I assumed was a breather, off of this port back here that I had mentioned, that the old carburetor just had an open port. This one has like a brass piece in it, and it does have a little tiny hole in the bottom. So it is some type of breather. If I leave this hooked up, this carburetor will just blow gas all over the place, almost like crankcase pressure is filling the carburetor, pressurizing the bowl and causing it to back out. Odd. I mean, I'm not familiar with this carburetor setup. Like I said, this is the first time I've worked on one of these. But with that hose off, I literally can just whack the starter. And it'll fire right up and sit there and idle. It was smoking for a while. And I'm just gonna let it warm up. I'm gonna push it outside. So it's kind of strange. I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to see if I can find some kind of a diagram to understand what that tube is actually for, and if it's supposed to go to that. Maybe it was hooked up incorrectly to that spot and it actually goes somewhere else. So it's pretty slow to return to idle. So once it's fully warmed up, I'm going to do some adjusting of the idle screw. Right now it doesn't seem like it's very responsive, the adjustment, so I'll wait until it's fully warmed up and then try to get back after it. Let me see if I can do some research, and I will figure out if that breather tube is supposed to go somewhere else or if that's really where it's supposed to be hooked up. But it won't run for anything with that hooked up there. So maybe that was the whole problem the entire time. Someone hooked that up there and it shouldn't have been. So I'll figure that out and I'll bring you back. Let you know how I made out. All right, so I've looked all over the internet as to where this breather is supposed to go. I don't know if you can see down there, but this is, you see that hose down there on the crankcase. It comes up, it has a filter in line, which I guess makes sense for pulling in dirt and stuff like that. So here's the filter, if I can get this up and show you. So there's a filter down in there. The odd thing is this has a clamp on it. So it's like it was meant to go over a tube or like a barb fitting. It's odd that I don't find anything. Maybe the original air cleaner actually had a place for this to attach into. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. And like you saw, this had like an aftermarket carburetor and air cleaner on it. So maybe when he did that, he didn't know that it shouldn't have been hooked to where it was. He just couldn't figure out where to put it, and the only place that made sense was where it was. Which I don't blame him. On this, I'm just going to zip tie this thing up out of the way so that it's not hanging down on stuff. I think as long as it's up high somewhere, I think it's totally fine. The idea of it is just to allow air into the crankcase, but you want it up high so if you drive through water or anything like that, it's not going to suck stuff in. So let me get down in this way. So where I'm planning on putting it is there's a tube in the frame right there in front of you, this tube here. I'm just gonna take this hose and I'm gonna pull it around this, and then I'm just gonna zip tie it tight to here. Not so tight, obviously, that it can't breathe, but just tight enough that it holds it up off exhaust and everything else. And I feel like if you get this far into the water, your air filters and your air filter's underwater anyway, so this engine's gonna stop and be done. So I figure this is high enough for it. If I do happen to find where it goes, I will add a photo in this video when I'm editing it, but right now this is where it's going because I need to get going on changing the oil on this thing. And then we will, I don't know, I need to find somebody to ride it. There's no one around. I'm sure this thing has a weight limit on it. So we'll do that, and then we'll pull the drain plug right now. This is the drain plug right in the middle here. I'm hoping you can actually see that. Get a light in here. It's pretty, this is one of those times. See this right here hanging down? That's the drain plug. It is a 17 millimeter. This thing's just high enough that I'm not like putting it on blocks or anything, but just low enough that it's a kind of a pain to get at. All right, let's see how this goes. I'm gonna dump it everywhere. It's in a weird spot with this frame that I can't really get a hand in here to get this thing out of here easy without, I'm sure, getting oil all over. And this engine is warmed up. Let's see, how long is this thing? I'm trying to get to the last thread and just hold it up in there so that we don't totally, Jesus. There we go. There we go. All right. So we got that draining. I'm going to let that drain. The fill for this is right up there. There's a dipstick there. This is on the right side. I almost said passenger side, but this is on the right side of this thing. So like here's the foot brake. Here's the dipstick. Get this thing out. Probably drain a little quicker. The oil doesn't look real dirty. I don't know how, here's the dipstick. I don't know how many hours this has on it, but I know they did use it for a couple years. So get it going before they get too big to use it and lose interest. So, all right, I'm gonna let that drain out and then we'll, oh, it's already done. I think this thing only takes like 3/4 of a quart or something, somewhere around that number. So I'll get that back in. We'll get it filled back up. So I finished up the oil change, filled it back up. It did only take, it was less than a quart. So I think it's 3/4 it takes. So pretty simple oil change. I greased the chain on it. I adjusted the front brakes. It has drum brakes in the front and the single disc in the rear. So the front brake's still kind of, you know, it's got the brake on now and it's still, you can move it still. It takes a little bit of effort, but it does hold it in place. I'm not gonna wash it or anything. It's filthy, but it's starting to rain now. I don't have any kids hanging around here in the neighborhood at the moment that can take this for a rip around the lawn, but I want to just make sure everything works on it, and when you hit the throttle, that actually takes off. So we're going to gorilla on a tricycle this thing, and I'm going to jump on it. I have no idea if it'll even move with me on it, but and I don't know if it's going to start right back up. I adjusted everything, got it running good when it was warm. Sometimes when things cool off and you go to fire them back up, you've adjusted it too far and you got to kind of back it down. So let's give it a shot here. Switch on. I'd say that's pretty good. It is definitely not made for any regular size adults because it hurts my legs to even try to get them up on the footrest. So, but pretty good. We'll load it up in the truck and bring it back to them, and they can rip around in the rain today. I appreciate you watching. Hopefully this helps. You know, if you've got the same type of situation, like I said, going into this, I have no idea. I've never worked on one of these before. Weird little four-wheeler. It's, you know, not, you know, it's all right. It seems to do the job, and it actually seemed like it was pretty quick. I'm 195 pounds, 190 pounds right now, and it seemed to rip around pretty good. If my legs fit on it, it probably would move me fine. I'd probably end up flipping it if it did, though. So, all right, well, have a great day, and, you know, take it easy.